among others.
Of course, you know, on the circuit, you'll find Chris Anderson playing this deck. Caleb Durward adopted this deck as well. But Matt Nass and Luis Scott Vargas, along with Josh Otter-Layton, playing it in Denver last week. And Matt Nass making the top 8. So deck is picking back up because when you're in a format full of discard decks, and decks that are trying to attrition you out like Bug, Rug, those sort of things, the unique combo of Wirewood Symbiote plus Elvish Visionary actually kind of outdoes those effects.
Yeah, you definitely, the Elves deck is way more robust against the attrition control aspects than a lot of other combo decks are.
So we are going to see both players keep their hand here. Heritage Druid, the first of many elves we will be highlighting in this particular match. So if you guys are new to the combo elves deck, excuse me, we'll be bringing some of these up for you guys to take a look at here. Now the interesting thing about this matchup, Patrick, is that the Rug Delver deck. You'll take a look at Marc's deck. He does have a little bit of removal and 1 Chain Lightning, 1 Izzet Charm, and 4 Lightning Bolts. It is difficult to know which ones to hit.
Yeah, I mean, generally you want to. Target number 1 has to be Wirewood Symbiote. That's the straw that stirs the drink.
Yeah.
Allows it to make a bunch of mana, draw a bunch of cards with Elvish Visionary. That's going to be target number 1. The second thing that you want to be breaking up is generally mana. Llanowar Elves can be dangerous, and Thinhorn Elves, but Heritage Druid especially, since that allows you to turn any of the sort of non-specific sort of doofusy elves into Llanowar Elves themselves. So Wirewood Symbiote, though, is the clear number 1 target you want to be going after.
That's definitely the best one, as we do see a lot of Force of Wills in Marc's hand. Now, the interesting thing here about this deck as well is that Force of Will not terribly good against elves because the effects are so redundant.
Right. I mean, Glimpse is the big one. That's the unique effect in elves, and by far the most dangerous card. So having an answer to that is very good. But elves is actually capable of winning without actually fully going off. Actually, just generate a large board, and Zenith for Greater Hoof Behemoth, like it has that angle, or Natural Order. And so, certainly you can, the ideal way to win if you're the Elves player is by comboing out, but the deck is fully capable of just playing a bunch of guys and beating down and tutoring for one of its big threats.
You do see that a second Heritage Druid hits with a Daze. Sterling going to play a Gaia's Cradle here and play a Wirewood Symbiote. And we'll see if Marc is going to burn one of these Forces of Wills here, and it doesn't look like he's going to. Well, yeah, thinking about it, okay. So it hasn't quite resolved just yet. The interesting thing here, Patrick, is that as we do see a Force of Will on the Wirewood Symbiote, Sterling also did have a Forest in his hand, and he's opted to play the Gaia's Cradle, so, opening that up to Wasteland right now.
Yep. But with him ahead on mana, it's possible he might even want to induce that play.
Yeah. We do see an attack from 1 here from the Heritage Druid, knocking Marc down to 18. And now you do see that Wasteland take care of that Gaia's Cradle. So again, you may be correct in looking to induce there a little bit.
Although with crop rotation in hand, it seems better to lead with your Cradle last so you can crop rotate against any Wastelands.
Now you do see a Marsh Flash drawn for the turn by Sterling. He does have, as you mentioned, crop rotation, Green Sun Zenith, and a Forest in his hand, so not a lot of action. But Marc, obviously, as you can see, he has a pen and a bunch of cards in his hand. He has no board. We are going to see that Marsh Flats here. It's going to search out a Bayou. And the reason you'll find that, of course, is because the Elves deck, like many other decks in Legacy now, has adopted Abrupt Decay.
And Cabal Therapy in the sideboard as well. Marc's hand not particularly good. He does have a Force of Will, but he's missing green mana for the Nimble Mongoose in his hand. He has a Spell Pierce. Not a ton of action here. It's funny in Legacy because of Force of Will and Daze and all these attrition elements. Both players can run out of action very early in the game.
Yeah. Because the decisions are compressed into the first opening turns of the game, it doesn't really come to surprise. In turn 4, both players have in between 1 to 3 cards in their hand. That's about it.
Right.
You don't really find that in Standard.
So we're going to Zenith for 1. We're going to go get Deathrite Shaman. And this is another new addition to the Elves deck, both as a source of more mana acceleration, assuming you and your opponent are going to be using fetch lands, and also some graveyard disruption as well. On top of everything else it does, which is a lot, it is an elf.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Why not? Why not just be a changeling? You know what I mean?
Yeah, has two
Already does everything.
Has 2 toughness, so I can't attack a Goblin Lackey. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Wizards.
Make my life so difficult. So we do see a Volcanic and a Ponder here from Marc Lalague. Marc looking for lands here as he's going to consult with his hand right now and those pondered cards. He's going to shuffle away rather quickly here.
Yeah, no Tropical Island, and that Ponder was looking at 2 green spells, so no help there. And, you know, with Marc trying to sort of floundering around looking for action, and Sterling also low on action himself, Deathrite Shaman just pinging for 2 every turn, pinning down Marc's graveyard, actually could be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, certainly not something to ignore. As you see Sterling draws another Marsh Flash, you're going to see Heritage Druid come across here, knock Marc down to 16. But all he has right now is a crop rotation and 2 lands, and you know, even if you were to draw a glimpse into glimpse of nature, not even that good of a draw right now.
Right, Natural Order would be nice, and that's kind of a new addition to this deck. It used to lean very heavily on Glimpse of Nature. Natural Order means in scenarios where you've had to play out your elves to just get enough mana and to build up a board, Natural Order also can allow you to go off.
Yeah.
We've watched many elves matches over the last year or so where they had to play out their creatures either to trade or just to generate enough mana and aren't able to glimpse for enough because too many of the creatures have already been played. So in games where that's your line, Natural Order is sort of a backup Glimpse of Nature.
As we do see the shuffling occur here from the fetch land, see what Marc is able to muster up as he does find a tropical island now. And we might see a Termagant join the fray, maybe a Nimble Mongoose here, so he can actually get a clock online.
But Deathrite Shaman's going to do a lot of good work against either of those threats.
Yeah.
And we're going to see a Nimble Mongoose.
And so we are going to see a Deathrite Shaman here on the end of Marc's turn with an activation here. Going to take care of a Ponder and deal Marc 2, push him down to 13.
Sterling, though, again, basically out of action. Draws a Prince of Titania.
So he's getting to a nice critical mass of mana now. Mana not really going to be much of the issue. Of course, crop rotation can search for... he does have 2 copies of Gaia's Cradle, so if he needs mana, he can certainly find that. However, of course, he's still looking for that action card.
And that draw step's a very good example of why Natural Order is a nice addition to this deck. The Elves deck gets into this position kind of on the regular against Disruption or against Interaction. And in that situation where you only have Glimpse to go off with, if you draw a Priest of Titania, you're like, am I supposed to cast this thing? Because I can kind of use the mana when the turn I do go off, but I also need to have a bunch of creatures in my hand the turn I do go off.
Sure.
Natural Order gives him a live draw now, and it allows him to continue to build up his board and build up his mana.
You do see maybe a slight hiccup there with how Sterling did tap his mana, as we're going to see a Thought Scour from Marc targeting himself, as he will not be able to activate the black side of Deathrite Shaman this turn.
And Marc electing not to Force of Will the Priest of Titania.
Yeah, you know, personally doesn't really seem like it's really affecting that much. Sterling just having 2 cards left in hand, I think Marc can pick his spots a little bit better with the Force of Will there.
Yeah, and Sterling's not log jammed on mana. I mean, he doesn't need this much to go off.
Yeah.
Like, Priest of Titania is not the break point where now he can do things he otherwise couldn't.
Yeah.
I guess with the exception of Green Zenith, but Marc still has that covered with Force of Will.
Yep. Now we do see Marc scratching his head, figuring out exactly what he wants to do here. We are going to see Wasteland there on the Bayou. We're going to see a crop rotation in response. Crop rotation is a card that we will bring on the stream for you guys, as Marc is going to take a look at it as well. Sacrificing land, part of the cost.
Yes. So that Bayou should be in the graveyard, but
this one lets you search for any land card, and it does put it right into play untapped, which is a big deal here with this card.
And is it Charm and Spell Pierce? I mean, Sterling's got more than enough mana to pay with this Heritage Druid, so the soft counters aren't an option here. And Marc really can't use his Force of Will to fight over something this small. Although it definitely, I mean, this definitely matters. The amount of damage that Marc's taking here is not insignificant.
Absolutely. I mean, these points certainly do matter. So we do see Is It Charm actually in Marc's hand right now. To go along with that Force of Will, you're going to see Nimble Mongoose come on over.
It's going to be a 3-spot and knock Sterling down to 15. And I assume we're going to be Is It Charming this Deathrite Shaman now. We've had enough of this.
Yeah. And he is going to remove Ponder from the graveyard, dealing Marc 2 more, knocking him down to 11.
Wirewood Symbiote. And the ferocious elf beatdown continues.
Hey, whatever it takes. Knock Marc down to 9 now. Force coming in, Wirewood Symbiote being the last card, and there it is.
So is Marc hand 2 lands and Force of Will?
And you'll see right there, that's a Dryad Arbor. And it's smart of Marc to push that forward because it does look like a basic forest.
Yeah. I like the artistic flourish that they did with this one, but it does make it harder to identify as a Dryad Arbor.
Because we didn't even know that was a Dryad Arbor.
No.
I had actual no idea. So thank you, Marc, for pulling that forward. Very used to the old Dryad Arbor picture.
Yeah. Fancy.
You fancy, huh?
You fancy, huh? From the Vault Realms purchaser. So, Sterling with no shortage of good draws here. Green Zenith and Natural Order. Even something as innocuous as Elvish Visionary would all be awesome here.
Yeah. A lot of good draws available here.
And for Marc, the card he would ideally find is his Singleton Grim Lavamancer.
Yeah, I mean, that, he's looking for just any way to start pressuring the opponent. The tough part here for Marc is that his attacks are poor because of the Symbiote. He just block and then bounce the guy back to his hand. Not making any headway there. And then if he's attacking like that, not getting any damage, he's going to be taking damage on the attack back. So,
yeah, he's losing the race right now. He actually has to hold back on D.
And we are going to see a Green Sun Zenith 4-2.
And I assume this means we're going to go get Elvish Visionary and start just gassing up.
And that's exactly what it looks like he's going to do. And this combination of cards is exactly how you go about beating these bug decks that are existing right now with their Hypnothorax and their Thought Seizes. You just grind. You actually have the ability, oddly enough, to outgrind them with the simple combo of Elvish Visionary and Wirewood Symbiote. Strange but true.
Yep. Gonna tap the Priest for, and we drew another
Elvish Visionary. So here we go.
And we drew another Symbiote off of that. Yeah. An embarrassment of riches.
Yes, here comes the pain. A lot of cards coming from a mono green deck.
So you see Sterling use a die here. I believe that is just to identify that the Symbiote has been used for the turn.
Yep. You do see him bounce the Elvish Visionary.
Oh, it's mana floating. Sorry, it's mana floating.
Okay.
But
there are some players who do things a little bit different with their mechanics with elves. I know that Chris Anderson, when he does use his Wirewood Symbiote, he actually turns it upside down.
Yes.
Every time he does use it to make sure that there is no confusion. Doesn't use it a second time. So we do see a second Wirewood Symbiote here. It's going to add 4 mana, activate the ability there with the Symbiote, bringing back the Visionary. So just as quickly he's going to be able to draw a bunch of cards, just a little bit of mana floating. He can get through his deck.
And there's a glimpse. So next turn could get real ugly for Marc.
Yep. And the thing about Rug is that there's nothing you can really do to get himself out of the situation.
No, once you're behind, your deck's all 1-for-1s.
Yeah. The goal is to never get in this situation.
Now it's like his counterspell's not even very good here because Sterling has so much redundancy on the board. He has 2 Symbiotes and 2 Visionaries, so he can't break this up anymore.
Yeah.
A single bolt, maybe last turn would have meant something, but now it's too late.
So you're going to see a Tropical Island here. And you're going to see a Tarmogoyf, which is relatively useless.
Yeah.
And you're going to see on the end step here, he's going to use both the Wirewood Symbiotes to return both Elvish Visionaries, which means he's going to be able to see a ton of cards this turn. Yes, it does lessen the impact of Priest of Titania, how much mana it can add, as we do see Sterling draw a, Natural Order.
I'm surprised we're not leading off with Glimpse here.
I'm a little surprised by that as well, honestly. I think this is where you just kind of go off for the big turn. And there is a glimpse now.
And Mark's hand is Force of Will land. I mean, he is shields are down.
You're going to see 3 mana here from the Priest. And this is what we call going off with elves.
Yep. So Visionary for a draw 2. And for those of you not familiar who haven't seen this deck before, even though we had it on action earlier today, the way that this deck actually goes off from this position involves Nettle Sentinel and Heritage Druid. Every time, you know, you have new creatures in play coming in every time that can be tapped to the Heritage Druid, your Nettle Sentinel untaps. And so you are kind of even on mana as you're going along your business. When you find a second Nettle Sentinel, then you actually start netting mana on the elves that you're playing. And from there you generate enough mana to either Regal Force or Craterhoof Behemoth or like whatever arbitrary way of winning.
But you just start generating so much mana and seeing so many cards, and because the deck plays so few lands, that you're able to just breeze through your deck. And now with every creature that Sterling casts, he's actually going to be seeing 2 cards because there are 2 Glimpse of Nature, so those do stack up. And now this is where things just begin to spiral out of control.
Yeah, initially when the deck starts going off, it's often net even on mana and net even on cards as it's sort of cycling through and building up its board. When it finds additional glimpses and additional Nettle Sentinels, that's where it actually starts adding cards and adding mana on each card you play, and that's when things spiral completely out of control.
Yep. As we're going to see 3 mana left in the pool, and you're basically going to see him drawing 2 cards a turn, playing elves, untapping and tapping Nettle Sentinels for mana. You might see some Wirewood Symbiote activations here on a Priest of Titania, returning Elvish Visionary, which would net him 3 cards instead of 2. But all these things are going to be happening, and there's nothing that Marc can do about any of this stuff.
Yeah. And Sterling has to feel comfortable right now that he's not playing against any resistance, because Marc would have done something before all this started happening.
Yeah.
It's not like he's saving the Force of Will for the Craterhoof Behemoth. It's not like that.
So you see Sterling with more than 7 cards in this hand. He's going to be adding more green mana to his mana pool. Priest, of course, can tap at a moment's notice to add a bunch of green mana for each elf in play. Keep in mind, of course, for those of you guys who've never seen this deck in action, the only non-elf in play right now is Wirewood Symbiote. Of course, you can count Dried Arbor as well, but Wirewood Symbiote is an insect, not an elf.
Marc is going to patiently wait and hope for a mistake out of Sterling, but we are at the point of no return if Sterling's operations are correct.
Yeah. You see he does have 4 mana. He's going to tap these 3, move up to 7. And with just a few more elves, as you do see a Quirion Ranger there, he's going to be able to draw a few more cards, make a few more mana, and he does have the Craterhoof Behemoth in his hand, so he'll be able to finish the game.
He should be
off
down
that
a
way.
mana off that die, right? Because he played the Quirion. Yep. Okay, Marc's on it. Oh, I mean, at this point, mana is sort of an arbitrary.
Yeah, fairly arbitrary. They do want to keep the game as clean as they possibly can, but it is
more of a concept than a actual concrete figure at this point.
Yeah.
Sterling has a bunch of mana.
Yeah.
That is the short of this.
And there's the Craterhoof Behemoth.
Big
and that's
hood.
Marc. Yeah, that's Marc scooping it up.
Big hooves.
A little bit, you see some Elves players that are very mechanical with exactly how they do it. There's no questions about the game theory or anything like that, keeping, clean track of their mana. You can tell Sterling's not as experienced as your Matt Nash or Luis Scott Vargas, of course,
but
who is.
Right.
So,
but no, I mean, that was a very good example of that deck's ability to go from 0 to 60, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he had nothing in play. He had like 8 mana and 3 guys that weren't doing anything. And one Zenith was a million cards, and then the following turn was game. I mean, it took nothing really for him to be able to start churning over.
It takes very, very little for the Elves deck to go off. That's what's so scary about it, is that it can just play a normal game of just attacking people. Just give it the beatdown. It's not a big deal. Has a small card advantage engine in Elvish Visionary plus Wirewood Symbiote, and then that card advantage engine, as small as it may be, can snowball on itself like crazy, as you just saw.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, I played Matt Sperling for the top 8 at the LA Legacy Open.
Sure.
He was playing Elves and I was playing Burn, and I felt like I could never let him untap with a single creature.
Yeah.
Because that could just be it. You know.
You just never know. And the funny thing is, when you're on the elf side and you see players targeting your creatures with Burn, you're just going, okay. That's fine. Like, you don't even care. Sometimes it's hard to judge, you know, what elves are important, what elves aren't important, because again, they are so redundant, and you don't know if your opponent is trying to just give you the beatdowns or trying to combo you.
Right. And the deck can often do both. I mean, that game, part of the problem was Marc actually got in range from the beatdowns too early on, where he had to hold back and play a bit more defensively because he couldn't race anymore.
Yeah.
Anywho, sideboards.
I've got Marc's in front of me, and he does have some cards that are going to be useful here. He does have 4 copies of Submerge, which are going to be free, of course. Going to be a good find here. The big one here in Marc's sideboard, though, is 2 copies of Rough Tumble.
Yes.
Which is a card we'll bring up for you guys at some point during Game 2, especially if Marc does draw one. But it is a unique Pyroclasm effect in that it does 2 damage to creatures on the ground.
Right, so your Delver of Secrets is safe, and that's why this deck goes to that card instead of Pyroclasm.
Correct. Other cards that he does have here, I mean, Vendilion Click is okay, nothing special. Spell Pierce, not so much. A second Grim Lavamancer is 100% going to come in here. But those Submerges and those Rough Tumbles, that's exactly where Marc's going to want to be, and he's going to have to ponder and brainstorm into those cards pretty quickly.
On the other side of things, the one card Sterling has in his sideboard that I think is potentially a huge breaker here is Progenitus. He has a different natural order target that he has access to. Rug is just pretty ill-equipped to handle Progenitus as a card. Yeah. You can fly over with Delver, but that's basically it. He has a couple discard spells and 2 copies of Cabal Therapy and a copy of Thoughtseize. I'm not sure if he wants to have those cards. He also has a copy of Natural Order. I could see bringing in 4 Natural Orders and the discard spells and just trying to convert into a Progenitus deck that has the Elves combo as a backup. And the rest of his sideboard is the Galactic, Primage, Archdruid, Sylvan Library, a couple of Abrupt Decays. Maybe he wants Abrupt Decays removal for Grim Lavamancer, and certainly the other threats as well in Marc's deck. So he has a couple options to him, but I think Progenitus is going to become his primary game plan in this match.
Now, the interesting thing here with Elves is I find sideboarding with that deck to be a bit difficult.
Because the deck's all engine?
Yeah, just as far as, you know, what do you shave down on? And we talked about a little bit earlier, you know, I don't advocate shaving very often because that feels like lazy sideboarding, but what cards aren't important? What cards are worse than the others in general, but also just matchup specific? Like, is there a matchup where you don't want Nettle Sentinel? I can't imagine that being the case.
Right. Yeah, again, it's pretty challenging, right? Like, I could imagine, you know, you don't want all the creature tutors, but that seems like it's probably wrong too. I don't exactly know where you make space. I mean, he has a couple singletons in here that maybe he doesn't need. I guess they're Zenith targets.
Sure.
But a card like Birchlore Ranger is a Zenith target for when your hand is constructed in a certain way. It's not for like playing against resistance, right?
Yeah.
It's like when I need this particular source of mana. I mean, I guess maybe you don't need Craterhoof, Behemoth, and Regal Force. Yeah, especially if you're on a Progenitus plan. Like maybe, you know, you have one finisher if you're going off through Glimpse, and you have Natural Order for Progenitus, and you don't need whatever the inferior one is.
You know, I guess maybe cutting crop rotation is pretty easy. Maybe slicing down some number of Natural Orders is pretty easy. I mean, I don't know if this deck would ever board out Glimpse of Nature. That seems dubious at best to be able to ever do that. That is, you know, your way of getting a huge advantage and ultimately killing people in certain games. So
I could imagine a world where you say, listen, he's got too many soft counters and too many bolts for my stuff. It's just too hard for me to go off, like actually fully go off through Glimpse of Nature. I'm going to cut the Nettle Sentinels and just say Glimpse is going to be a value play for me. I'm going to draw some cards with it. I'm not actually going to look to fully go off because it's just too hard to do against Rug. Because Nettle Sentinel is really only good when you're actually trying to kill someone in one turn.
Sure.
You don't need it to generate value off all of your Glimpses because with enough mana, you can just play a bunch of guys, draw a bunch of cards, and that's more than a good enough use. But again, this is sort of speculation.
Yeah. There's 2 players that do not play a ton of Elves, and I tried to give it a shot, but I never really, you know, wrapped my head around it. And one of the reasons I never did is just because that sideboarding, that element of playing those second and third games and how people are trying to attack you and what you're supposed to move in and move out when you are under attack, it's difficult to figure out.
Well, I would assume that once you're on Progenitus, you would probably de-emphasize the other combo aspects of your deck.
Sure.
Because Progenitus is just, in most spots, going to be good enough to beat Rug. As long as you're not too far behind on the board, or they don't have a bunch of flip Delvers, or whatever, Progenitus is just a 2-hit kill. It motes them the turn you play it. So it seems like a very good direction to go.
So you do see Marc is going to keep his opening 7. Sterling going to move down to 6 cards here.
Yeah, Mark's certainly getting considerably better in the post-board games with a couple Pyroclasms and a Lavamancer and a full playset of Submerges.
It really seems like he's got some nice cards to move out here. Force of Will does not seem great here. It seems okay, but again, with the redundancy of these effects, it does not seem to be a great card in this particular matchup. Also, Stifle does not seem to be particularly good either, at least in my opinion.
Well, the issue is that, I mean, if Sterling's on, if you know he's on Natural Order for Progenitus, you have to keep in some of your Force of Wills.
Sure.
Because you don't want to have a million Spell Pierces against this deck, because there's only so many spells. And Natural Order for Progenitus, uncontested, can beat even a lot of your very good draws.
And you take a look at Mark's deck list here, I do see 2 Spell Pierces. I see 1 Spell Snare. It doesn't have a lot of targets. And you also see 4 copies of Daze. And Daze goes from good to bad fast in this matchup.
It's a very good descriptor. It can be awesome, but awesome early.
Yeah.
It quickly loses its window to be productive.
So we're going to see a Force and a Llanowar Elf here.
A classic Magic opening.
Feels so good, as we do see a Brainstorm here from Mark.
That's only part of the reason, another thing that I like about Legacy, for all the insanity that goes on, you still see Forest, Llanowar Elf, your turn. Now, obviously, he's trying to do something busted with it, eventually. But at least, for the time being, there is an illusion of innocence about the way the game is proceeding.
Feels honest.
All right. I want to cast a Guy's Leash, so I'm going to use this Llanowar Elf to get and play a little bit faster, you know? I use it to pay for my Force of Nature.
So we do see Llanowar Elf resolve. Mark gives that the A-OK. Sterling does pass back. And we do see that Mark does have at least 1 Grim Lavamancer in his hand to go along with a Force of Will and some other mystery cards here. And Grim Lavamancer is the card that can really turn things around here for Mark, as long as he can keep that graveyard stocked.
Yep. I believe Sterling does, fortunately enough for him, have one of his Abrupt Decays, if I saw his hand correctly.
Once again,
and it looks like you did. And you also do see a Verdant Catacombs in his hand as well, so he will be able to find a Bayou, and he will be able to take care of that Grim Lavamancer with an Abrupt Decay.
So at least he passes the first test. Beating a Lavamancer plus Force of Will on the draw, very challenging.
Yeah.
So there's the Bayou.
And we're going to see everyone's favorite new Legacy card, really just over the course of this weekend, multiple weekends here on the Open Series, just seeing how good Abrupt Decay really is.
Yep.
Fantastic
Certainly
card.
Making much more of an impact in Legacy than in Standard. But
yeah.
Legacy, obviously, much more dominated by cheap permanents, and so it would stand to reason that would be the case.
Let's see, we are going to see the Abrupt Decay take care of that guy right there. And we're going to see an attack here for 1 with the old Llanowar Elf. And Sterling going to pass the turn back. Mark going to sacrifice the Scalding Turn on the end of Sterling's turn. Clear away some of that Brainstorm.
Yeah.
He did get to keep 1 of those cards, but he's going to clear away the second one, find a Tropical Island, fix his mana base, and get himself a fresh draw step.
Did he Brainstorm? I thought he just played a Lavamancer. Oh, no, you're right. No, you're right. Absolutely.
So let's see what Mark can come into here. As you do see a second Lavamancer in Mark's hand right now. Let's see Wasteland take care of that Bayou. So that's a pretty big draw there by Mark. And now you have Lavamancer threatening again. Again, only 2 copies in Mark's 75, so a little bit fortunate here to be able to have both of those. But again, that's part of the reason that, and especially in Rug Delver, singletons matter because it's easier for you to find them than in other decks.
Yep. No shortage of cantrips.
So you're going to see a Misty Rainforest here sacked by Sterling. Sterling, careful to not search right away. You want to make sure it does resolve in case Mark does have a Stifle, but he does not.
That is one of the more irritating, subtly, one of the more irritating aspects of Legacy to me is just the holding out the fetch land that happens all the time because it's the 1 card.
Is this A-okay? Yeah, you're good.
I know it's almost certainly okay, but I had to double check because you could stifle me. How much time does that pause add to everyone's experience playing in the tournament, you know?
I'll let you count the minutes.
Yeah, sands on a beach, you know?
That's right. So we are going to see here from Sterling An Elvish Visionary, the card that turned around the game for him last time. We'll see if Marc is willing to fight over this. As you do see, Marc has a Force of Will in his hand to go along with a Spell Pierce to remove it to. But is it worth Force of Willing an Elvish Visionary? And based off of game 1, you can make the argument for yes.
Well, the issue, I mean, the major incentive to Force of Will here is that he doesn't want Sterling to get in front of him on the board, because that can mitigate a lot of the advantage he's going to generate on Grim Lavamancer. As long as he can always keep Sterling down to 1 or 2 creatures in play, Lavamancer is going to be insane. Yep. The minute that he lets Sterling get out in front on the board, the Lavamancer just can't contain everything. So even the Visionary is pretty innocuous there. I think a lot of that play is motivated by just, don't let Sterling get a bunch of stuff on the board. Let my Lavamancer do its thing, and you know, I can win pretty quickly with the Tarmogoyf that's in my hand, as long as I suppress his board.
We are going to see Marc sacrifice that Scalding Tarn there to search up a Volcanic Island. We do know that Marc's hand is a Tarmogoyf and a land, so Grim Lavamancer going to take care of the Land of Werewolf. Marc going to present a clock now here as well with a Tarmogoyf, and the Tarmogoyf die will enter the screen for you guys in a moment to see just how big he is. Guys, cradle the draw step here for Sterling, as you do see a Elvish Visionary come on down, and it does draw Sterling a natural order, a huge draw.
Okay, we might, I mean, he has cradle plus natural order, so we're not that far off from being able to go like next turn.
Not at all. And the problem here, of course, is that Marc may not be able to kill all the creatures in time.
I mean, we're actually good to go, I think, next turn. I don't know if what Marc has left in his hand, but if he lets Sterling on tap with this creature in play, that's enough mana, and we can go get Progenitus.
Yeah, assuming that he did board Progenitus in, that will be enough to do it. Now, Marc's card coming into this turn was just a land, and you are going to see a Lavamancer activation here to take care of the Birchlore Rangers. Now, see Tarmogoyf come across for 3. But if Progenitus is in his deck, and as long as Marc hasn't drawn something of relevance, this could be a wrap here.
This could be... Yeah, I'm...
So you do see Heritage Druid is Sterling's draw step. He's going to play Gaia's Cradle.
Here we go.
And is he willing to pull the trigger here? 4 mana, natural order.
You can see him give it. And he has Spell Pierce.
Oh wow!
Well, he has a sack creature, right? Or is that as a cost or resolution?
That's a good question. I'm pretty sure it's on resolution with natural order.
Oh, okay, no, it's cost.
It's on a cost. Okay, never mind. So Marc actually fortunate to peel Spell Pierce there, as his outs were very slim, because he did start that turn with just a Volcanic, and now you see Marc pondering right away.
And that's exactly, I mean, what we're talking about before with that elf deck. For as dominant as Marc's start was here, we were that close to the game being over.
Yeah.
Almost just getting basically cheated out of the game by Progenitus there.
So now Ponder does resolve. Marc chooses to keep the cards. You're going to see another Grim Lavamancer activation. Take care of the Heritage Druid. Just got to keep those guys off the board. You're going to see Delver of Secrets here as well. In with Tarmogoyf for 4. And now the clock is on, and Sterling has no cards in his hand. Marc has a graveyard, and it's going to be a very difficult game for him to win now.
Yeah, this is pretty close to a wrap here. I mean, Lavamancer is just...
And you do see Sterling concede the game. Marc, Lalague tying it up.
Yep. And that, I mean, if you're watching that game, you're just like, Marc's just dominating here the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, he has active Lavamancer. He's played Force, and, you know, has a clock going, and we were that close to Sterling just ending the game on the spot.
Yeah. Marc with a very favorable top deck of that second Spell Pierce there, to be able to counter the natural order. But, I mean, that's the card that I wasn't sure he was going to leave in. I think if it were me, I may have boarded him out, and I would have been horribly wrong about that. So,
yeah, you would have just died?
Yeah.
I probably would have died, too.
Yeah, Progenitus would have gotten the better of me there. You do see Marc re-sideboarding really quickly here, considering his options, as we do see Sterling just shuffling back up. It feels like to me, Patrick, in this matchup, it is very important to be on the play, especially for Marc.
Yeah, I mean, so many of his elements. I mean, I think Sterling can play ball against a Lavamancer on the draw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the play, it's a much different animal.
So So we see both players shuffling up here. Now, one way that Marc can actually catch up when he is on the draw, though, is that rough tumble.
Yes.
You know, that's one thing that he's going to be able to use to catch back up.
Submerge, too.
That's
It's
also true.
Not as dramatic as rough tumble, but it does allow him to break serve a little bit.
Yeah.
But he has to be very aggressive using those submerges. It's not, you know, again, it's exactly the same reason you saw him force a will, that Elvish Visionary that didn't seem very powerful at the time. You know, no symbiote in play, nothing that threatening going on. He can't allow Sterling's board to get out of control because it means that he can't attack anymore, and once he can't attack anymore, Sterling has all the time in the world to find some of his bombs. And so I think he has to be very aggressive in using his submerges just to keep Sterling off of developing his board as quickly as possible. You know, there's a lot of matchups like in the Rug Delver Mirror where you're trying to use Submerge to blow someone out in combat, or get fancy, like wait for them to sack land so you can Submerge away their guy and have them shuffle away. That kind of stuff. This isn't the matchup for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just fire them off aggressively, trade your draw steps for his draw steps, and let your Pyroclasms and your Lava Mancers take the game home.
So we do see Marc drawing his opening 7. Same with Sterling here. We'll see what both players are able to keep as Marc does leaf through his hand. I did not see a red card there. And the things that we're looking for in his opening hand, of course, are Grim Lavamancer and Rough Tumble. I don't see any right now, so it begs the question, you know, if you don't have those cards in your opening hand, he has, you know, Ponder and Brainstorm type effects. Do you keep a hand without that stuff?
I believe so. I mean, you have to keep these kind of hands with Rug all the time, right? Like, a lot of your deck is constructed around Ponder and Brainstorm letting you shave numbers. So you're good hands with Ponder and Brainstorm, but without your sideboard cards, I think you're kind of married to them, you know?
Yeah. So we do see both players are going to keep their opening hand. You see Sterling sacrificing a fetch land here, going to search for a Bayou. We might see Deathrite Shaman join the fray here, or one of these other bevy of 1-drops that Elves does have.
Maybe a discard spell?
Yeah, certainly possible.
He has a Thought Season 2 Cabal therapies. And like I said, once he's on Natural Order Progenitus, I like that angle a lot more than I would otherwise. Looks like it's Deathrite Shaman.
Taking a look through his hand, you do see a Regal Forest. You also see a Nettle Sentinel. I believe there is, yes, a Natural Order there as well. Marc does find a Lightning Bolt. He's going to get that thing out of here right now.
Yep.
Showing him to take a draw step, does find a Forest.
I believe that was, oh no, he has another. Does he have, was that his second land, or is there one on the left there?
I believe there is one on the very far left.
Yeah,
and there
okay,
is. That is
that's
a
a
Forest as well. The other card in Sterling hand is an Abrupt Decay, so Grim Lavamancer not going to get the job done this go around, as we do see a Nettle Sentinel here. Marc going to draw a card. We're going to see Brainstorm here to start his turn. Misty Rainforest among the others there. We also do know he has a Nimble Mongoose, so he will be able to put some cards away and do some fetching. And then be able to play one of his 1-mana guys, either a Delver of Secrets or a Nimble Mongoose here.
Yeah, the real question is, what's his access to disruption?
Yeah. We'll see Misty Rainforest sack the things away. Let Brainstorm act as an Ancestral Recall this go around. And search out, predictably, a Tropical Island.
So we'll see what Marc's follow-up here is. I believe he has a Submersion in his hand. I'm curious to see if he wants to use it right now. Again, just to generally contain the board, or if he wants to wait for a Mana Accelerant or a Wirewood Symbiote or something along those lines. Nettle Sentinel is basically the least threatening elf that Sterling can play here, so he might be happy to just leave this thing in play for a bit.
Yeah. We do see Wirewood Symbiote drawn for Sterling's turn here. Delver of Secrets in hand for Marc. And we're going to see the Symbiote come across. So let's see what else Sterling can muster up here in his second main phase. A lot of options. Abrupt Decay.
Is that a Golgari Charm?
Actually, it does look like a Golgari Charm, yes. I thought that was a copy of Abrupt Decay, but he also does have 2 copies of Golgari Charm in his hand. Or excuse me, in his sideboard, one of which in his hand. He's going to tap the Nettle Sentinel, and he is just going to pass back. So what it looks like to me, a little bit short on lands?
I thought there was a forest in his hand, though.
I do see one. Maybe that's a Dryad Arbor, not the forest? I'm not quite sure.
I mean, he should still play it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Curious play.
And a natural order in Sterling's hand.
You're going to see a Submerge here. Take care of the Wirewood Symbiote. And that's a card that we're going to bring up on the camera for you guys as well. Take a good look at that free instant that's going to put Wirewood Symbiote back on top of Sterling's deck.
In the historically lopsided fight of green creatures against blue spells, Submerge is just another middle finger.
Yeah. This does a nice job. This does a nice job embodying that.
Yeah.
As we are going to see the Nimble Mongoose come across, maybe baiting a little bit. Okay, so we are going to see a Thought Scour here from Marc. Try to get him into blocking. You're going to see him turn over a Submerge and a Daze. He's going to draw himself a fresh one. And that's going to be 3 damage there for Sterling. Now you do see a Tropical Island here from Marc. You're going to see a second Nimble Mongoose. So that's going to be a 3/3. And now you're going to see a Delver of Secrets.
So we got a clock.
The beatdowns are here. And we both know that Sterling did draw that Wirewood Symbiote, and we do see.
Whoa. Oh, we're going to -1/-1. We'll go Gary Charm if he blocks with the Nimble Mongoose?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that'll take care of the Delver of Secrets and the Nimble Mongoose.
Marc trying to figure out what that attack could possibly be about.
Yeah.
Know? And he's just, all right.
Yeah, if you're Marc, you're just like 15.
Yeah.
15's fine. Like even if you can't figure out what the card is, you're fine moving to 15. Now you're going to see Golgari Charm. And by our count, there is Threshold there.
Yeah, it'll get rid of the Delver.
Yeah. And there's the Dryad Arbor there.
Yeah.
So that may be the reason he didn't play his land last turn. It's because Golgari Charm would have taken care of the Dryad Arbor.
Okay, that explains it. Okay.
So you guys do see Golgari Charm on the screen, the 3 modes for you, -1/-1, so on a turn. Destroy target enchantment or regenerate each creature you control. The regeneration effect, pretty good against Rough Tumble, so pretty useful card to have in the sideboard.
Yep, and it can, suppress some of Marc's early action, which is important too.
Yep. However,
again, I'm always dubious about cutting a lot of engine to make room for stuff like that.
As am I. As we do see 6 damage come across from these Nimble Mongoose. Marc passing back.
Elvish Visionary is a pretty big draw here.
And that's where we're going to start up here.
Marc looking at a hand, I believe a Bolt, Force, and Submerge.
I believe that may be what those cards are. Can't really make out the other 2 in the corner there. Visionary going to draw a card. Visionary draws a second Symbiote. You do see the Submerge move to the front now. You do see the Wirewood Symbiote. Well, we'll see if Sterling wants to attack or not. Looks like it's Lightning Bolt time. Take care of this here.
Yep.
That's going to be in response to the Wirewood Symbiote, it sounds like. And now we do see Marc untap and move to his turn. Again, still does have that Submerge to go along with a freshly drawn Brainstorm now. So get even a little deeper into his deck.
Just trying to be... Is it Spell Pierce and not Force?
We do see Submerge take care of the Wirewood Symbiote. An attack here for 6 coming across. As you said, using these Submerges aggressively.
Yeah.
Not trying to get too cute with them, hitting them with fetch lands in response to Green Sun Zeniths. None of that nonsense.
Yeah, just cast it.
Yeah, pushing his advantage.
We're looking to chump block here.
Yeah, under consideration now. He is going to chump block there, knock himself down to 7 instead of 4.
I actually like this play. If his plan is, I mean, he has it covered because of Pierce, but I think the logic behind that chump block there is he goes to 7, right? Let's say he rips a land in natural order resolves. He can't, you know, Marc can't attack him for lethal with the nimble mongooses. Sterling then attacks with Progenitus, and then the mongooses are short of lethal.
Yep.
Whereas if he takes the hit and goes to 4, then Submerge suddenly matters too. Like, if he was planning on setting up natural order, I think that's a good chump block.
Now you see Marc brainstorm, and now you're going to see him cast Rough Tumble, with the rough half being the one that's caster. 2 damage to each creature without flying. It's going to clear up those symbiotes.
And the Arbor is dead too.
And the Arbor is gonna die as well. Yeah. Marc is right on top of that. So we're not gonna see any natural orders, and what we're gonna see is Craterhoof Behemoth for the draw. And we're gonna see an extension here as Marc Lalague winning 2-1. And not sure if he's gonna be able to sneak in at X2 or not, but worth a shot.
Yeah. I mean, that was a pretty awesome match, I gotta say. I mean, you saw the power definitely of Marc's sideboard there, because Rough Tumble, Grim Lavamancer, and Submerge were all dominant cards in the post-board games.
Another thing that you do see the power of there too is the power of Brainstorm, Ponder, and those cantripping type effects that will allow you to play a sideboard that's not 4-4-4-3.
Yeah.
You know, you get to play singletons. He only had 1 Grim Lavamancer in his main, 1 in his side, 2 copies of Rough Tumble, and he's able to find those cards and use those cards to advantage because he's able to get through his deck so quickly.
And it says a lot about the amount of respect that, you know, Marc shows for the mirror match and for elves and similar decks, where even with all the cantripping that you're talking about, he still went with a full play set of Submerges.
Yeah. And you know, when you're